Hey, noble ones, welcome to Metatron's Academy. As you know, on this channel we are very interested in international certifications, and also we are relatively involved with all sorts of different players within the language learning space. And one of these players is Matt from Matt versus Japan. Well, in this case we are actually checking out Matt versus the World, which I believe it to be his second channel. Suffice to say, he took the JLPT. So I'm actually quite interested to see how that one went. And I mean, the thumbnail, on the thumbnail it looks desperate. So of course it's clickbait. We all know the guy's really, whether you like him or hate him, the guy is really good at Japanese. So 100% he passed it. But I'm still interested to see how it went, what he has to say. So without further ado.
Hey guys, so a couple days ago I finally got back my JLPT N1 test score results.
Okay.
And so in this video I'm going to be revealing what score I got, talking about a little bit about what my experience was taking the test, and then also giving advice about how I recommend you think about the JLPT if you're studying Japanese.
Cool.
So without further ado, I'll just tell you my score because I know that's what most of you just want to hear.
Appreciate it.
I'll be honest, I did a lot worse than I thought that I did. On the language knowledge and reading sections, I got a perfect score. And on the listening section, I got 69 out of 80. Ugh.
Well, 49 out of it. I think, he misspoke. Okay, 49 out of 60, because of course there are 360s. Look, I believe this is N1, if I remember correctly. Of course it's going to be N1. And so, N1 is a really, really difficult test. So, at the end of the day, this is still an excellent performance. I imagine that he wanted to get 180. I understand that, perhaps. But still, of course, listening is going to be the hardest aspect of all of these tests anyways, because it's really easy to... I say that as someone who prepared a lot of students. If you checked my latest upload, you know what I'm talking about. But I was both in charge of those sort of running for years several courses to prepare people to get international certifications, mostly with English, but still within the European framework of reference from A1 to C2. And then I also worked as an international examiner, so I was on the other side. So here's the thing. Listening is, statistically, in my experience, the one part that most students fail at. And he didn't fail. But of course, he, I suppose, underperformed compared to his own expectations. I don't want to speak too much, but then again, it's still excellent result.
If you want to hear my excuse, of course, everything I'm about to say is just an excuse. And so feel free to call it cope and feel free to make fun of me because I know I deserve it because I was way too cocky about this. But basically, it looks like I probably missed about 3 problems here. Because of the way that the questions are weighted, like it's not like you just miss a certain number of points for each question. Yeah. Missing one question can make you lose way more points than other questions. And basically what happened was I zoned out on one of the questions and totally missed the prompt and then had to make like a blind guess on one of them. And then right after that, I started thinking in my head, like, okay, I know I just missed a question, so now I probably won't get a perfect score. So what's the best score that I can still get if I don't miss any other ones? And then before I knew it, I had missed half of the next prompt. And
all right, so already I want to say this is common. Zoning out. I'll tell you how to make sure not to zone out. There is a way to practice for it. So apart from that, let me think. And this, by the way, applies to any international certification. I myself still haven't done the JLPT. I will at one point, just as a personal thing for my own interests. But of course, I did take the equivalent in English when I was a lot younger. This happened 10 years ago. And I did get a C2 with maximum points. I got maximum. But then again, this is absolute zoning out during the listening section. Very common problem, and as he correctly pointed out, it can be very detrimental if it happens to your final score. On the cocky part, it's a personality thing, or oftentimes it's connected to youth. The younger you are, the more cocky you are, particularly in the language space, even more so in the Japanese/Mandarin/Korean space. Let's be honest about this. It's all about, look at me, I'm awesome, I'm amazing, I'm incredible, I'm the best, and no one pronounces like me. Yeah, I'll impress you all. It's all about impressing. Eventually, I think you grow out of it, unless really it's a core tenet of your personality, I suppose. But I think that is one thing that just, it is what it is. I don't hate the guy at all. I think I respect Matt's language skills. He's extremely high-level speaker of Japanese, excellent pronunciation, fantastic pictures. He's a very good speaker of Japanese, very knowledgeable. He is cocky, though, and that's a little bit of an aspect of his personality. It's just important to underline, though. First of all, I don't dislike the guy. He's probably really fun to hang out with. It's just one thing to say. It's just one thing, right? It probably has a lot of other positive aspects. This one, it is what it is. I guess it's a sort of a byproduct of skill and talent, because it's important to underline the fact that some people, when they see language learners particularly being cocky, they want to put them down. They want to tear them down. They want to say, oh, you actually made one mistake there, so you went in that perfect way. Yeah, this guy is not good. He doesn't know what he's doing. I don't like that. I can say, guy's cocky, and his attitude is annoying, but he's good. He's really good. I can say it. I say the same about Xiaoma. I think Xiaoma is insufferable when he speaks. But I think he's really good. Excellent Mandarin speaker. Pronunciation-wise, actually, Matt is more talented because Xiaoma doesn't have the best pronunciation. There are other speakers that are better than him, but he's really fluent. Anyways, suffice to say, I'm going to let him speak. Let's go.
That next problem was one of the ones where there's like one prompt and then multiple questions for that prompt. And so if you miss the prompt, you miss multiple questions. And then I missed that.
Of course,
too.
yeah.
So, yeah, for me, it's really embarrassing, and I'm pretty disappointed in myself.
What are you talking about? It's N1, mate, right? Like, if it's N2, considering who he is, then I could see it. But it's not embarrassing. You did really well. It's N1, mate. It's the hardest thing you could try when it comes to Japanese proficiency.
Overall, it's still a very high score overall.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it still counts as like the C1 equivalency. It's basically like within the highest category of passing the test. So with that being said, I kind of want to talk about how I would recommend you think about the JLPT if you're learning Japanese.
Let's go.
So the first thing I want to talk about is, should you take the JLPT at all? Well, I think it depends on what level we're talking about. You know, obviously the JLPT has 5 levels. There's N1 through N5. And to be honest, I don't really see any point in taking N5, N4, or N3. Because even if you pass N3, that doesn't signify that you have a level of Japanese ability that you can really use in any professional setting, right?
I think it depends. In most professional settings, I agree. But I think there are some, I'll have to double check now, but off of my memory, just like that, I think there are some jobs that require N3, or some scenarios in which I could see that being at least an asset. Because remember, even if the job, here's what I'm going to say again, as someone who was a former examiner and trainer when it comes to this, even if a specific job doesn't require any JLPT or Cambridge or HSK, depending on the language, right? If you are competing for a job position with someone else and you are equal in apparent skill, you're equal with work experience, and you're equal with, in general, with your CV, but you have a JLPT 3 and he doesn't, you're going to get hired. It's an extra thing. It's an extra thing. If you're equal. Of course, if the guy has got like 5 years of experience over you in the job, then yeah, N3 is not going to be. But if you had an N1, it's different. You see, so it kind of depends. But then again, it's there is one reason why you should try those tests, but I don't want to speak too long, so I'll tell you why I'm generally disagreeing with him. I think you could try N5 if you wanted to, and I'll tell you why it can still be beneficial. But let's continue.
Right, like that's not going to get you some job you couldn't get otherwise, or help you get some visa that you couldn't get otherwise. It's really, as far as I see, just a way that you can, benchmark your own Japanese ability. And so I know a lot of people use the JLPT as just a way to in just that way, right? They use it to benchmark their own Japanese ability. It's a goal that they set for themselves. It's something that they like strive towards, and then they can have a sense of accomplishment when they take the test. And I totally understand that, but I don't think that you should use the JLPT for that reason, but I'm going to explain that a little bit later. When it comes to N2 and N1, I actually do think it's worth taking these, precisely because it can unlock certain employment and visa options in Japan. There's this idea that I hear talked about relatively frequently, which is that if you're good enough at Japanese, you can talk your way out of needing a JLPT certificate, right? Like you can go to a job interview in Japan, and if you're just fluent enough at Japanese, they'll be so impressed, they'll be like, oh, I'm going to hire you, or I'll give you the job, and they won't even ask about the JLPT. That's something that I feel like might actually happen in the West, but it's very unlikely to happen in Japan, because Japanese people are very strict about doing things by the book.
Oh yeah, they're very structured, is right.
Having certifications, having everything look good on paper. And so no matter how good you are at Japanese, even if you're at a level where the JLPT N1 would be very easy for you, a lot of times they're not going to hire you unless you have the certificate, because that's just the Japanese way of doing things.
Yeah.
And so if you are planning on moving to Japan in the future and working in a Japanese environment or living in Japan for an extended period of time, I think it is a good idea to try to ideally get Japanese and or the JLPT N1, just to unlock certain opportunities to you that might be closed off otherwise. And that's actually why I took it myself, because I want to be able to have every possible visa option open to me for the future going forward.
Cool.
So with that being said, like I said, I don't think there's any objective benefit to JLPT and N5, N4, N3. N2 and N1 probably should take. But with that being said, should you study for the JLPT?
Okay, so since it's moving on to a separate topic, I do want to add that explanation that I wanted to, not really that explanation, but my point of view. I think it is good to always, like, imagine that you want to get an N1, and of course that takes a monumental amount of study. Because remember, the hardest component of it is, of course, the kanji. And that is, in fact, what's going to make it extremely difficult, even if you are particularly fluent. You're really good when you speak. Yeah, great. But what's your kanji knowledge? Because unfortunately, that's going to be basically a massive component of the test. And if you're really good at kanji, then listening can be also a problem, as we said. Thing is, though, the reason why I think he had a problem with the listening is precisely because he didn't do the other levels before. If you build experience with test taking, so could even start with freaking N4. Do N4, pass it, good. You get accustomed and used to the mechanics of the test, to the experience. Then you do N3, and maybe the first time you don't pass it. Then the second time you do pass it. And the first time, why didn't you pass it? Because you spaced out. But now you have the experience, and you keep continuing to do that, right? To get used to the idea of taking the test in loco. And that experience will, because next time, if we had to take it again, right, he would use the experience that, man, I spaced out last time. I need to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's exactly why you need to take the tests multiple times before. And that's why, I would say that's why it's good to take the tests, even if they're earlier levels, because that way you get used to some of the problems that you can encounter in a test on the day of the exam, but you do it with levels that are lower and also that you care less about, and you build experience as a test taker. Of course, you can simulate that, which is why you should mock test as much as possible. I always suggest my students don't take a test unless you have done the mock test 10 to 15 times. That's what I usually suggest. But in general, there is only so much that, like, you can get really good, but then there might be situations because there is anxiety, right? Some people have anxiety, maybe the fact that this is the actual day of the test, and so you get a little distracted. Maybe there is an imbecile outside making noises with the freaking honk of his car, and you definitely didn't practice for that. So being able to be extra focused, not too much, because hyper-focusing can also be a problem, but just the right amount of focus where you're not easily distracted is a skill that you build with experience. And therefore, if you want N1, start taking N4, N3, N2, and build your way to it. Of course, you can start with N2 if you're already really good and you put a freaking decade into the language. I'm not saying you have to try N4 and N3. But for me as well, I think I'll take the N2 before I take the N1. And I'm someone who has taken a lot of tests, because it's just something that I do. Not to mention, I used to train people. So, of course, I've done a million mock tests and I've tried to simulate any possible scenario. I was on the other side as someone you would have to take the test with, and I would still try the N2 first. I think that's why he had that problem. So when he tells you, oh, there's no point in taking the other levels, just go for N1. But then he finds that he he did well, but he underperformed compared to what his potential is. Well, then don't listen to his advice, because otherwise you might end up having the same problem. Your potential is much higher, but because you didn't take the other tests before and the easier ones, you cannot fulfill and achieve your true potential.
And I think the answer in the vast majority of cases is no. And that's the most important idea that I really want to get across in this video. And the reason for this is that, like I said, I only really think JLPT N1 is truly what's valuable from an employment. standard. And so, should you study for the JLPT N1 in that case? Well, I would say no, because when you're talking about what level you need to be at in order to pass the JLPT N1, if you're at the level where you can read the average Japanese nonfiction book fairly comfortably, and you can turn on the average anime and watch it comfortably with no subtitles, or
so very high,
even just the average Japanese YouTube video and understand it with no subtitles without much challenge, then you're going to be able to pass the JLPT N1 without much struggle, even without any particular study. And that's my experience. If you want to get a perfect score, that's much harder, right? That's something I failed to do. I think in that case, you either need to just be smarter than me and a better test taker than me, have even...
No, more experienced with tests. That's it. Just like I said. You see, he doesn't know what you need to do. He thinks, smarter than me. No, not necessarily. You don't have to be particular. You can be the most intelligent freaking engineer on the planet and still fail it because you didn't know how to take the test effectively. And when it comes to a better test taker, what is a better test taker? That's what you need to ask. Because he's correct. Yes, you need to be a better test taker than him. How do you? To taking more tests. That's really that simple. It goes all the way back to what I was saying.
Better Japanese ability than me, or practice and actually study for the test, right? Or maybe take it multiple times.
Exactly.
So if you just want...
and the previous levels.
Really want to get a perfect score, then maybe, yeah, you should actually study for the test. But
of course,
in reality, there's no reason to try to get a perfect score on the JLPT N1, because when you apply for a job or something, right, they don't look at what your score was.
That's true.
All they look at is, did you pass the test, yes or no?
True.
And so on paper, if somebody just barely got over the line to pass and they almost failed, and someone else got a perfect score, when they turn in their job resumes, they look the same on paper.
Yeah, I agree with him, but I would say unless you want to become what I was. Because if you want to become someone who trains others, and I mean he gives you advice, so it is my opinion that if you need to teach something, you need to be the best, not the best in the world, but the best you can be when it comes to that skill that you want to teach. Again, when I took my English test, I made sure I got C2, maximum. I didn't make a single mistake. Then I felt, now I can teach it. Because I did it. So I can teach others how to do it. Okay? What he did is perfectly fine for using it as an employment opportunity if you want to work in any other situation. But for instance, if you want to teach people how you get this specific thing, this test, then you need to get the highest score possible. It's just my opinion, but that's what I think.
So there's absolutely no reason to get a perfect score on the test unless you just really want the bragging rights, which honestly I think is kind of silly.
No, it's not just about bragging.
Whereas on the other hand, if you want to pass the test, that's a much lower bar.
Sure.
And like I said, if you just have the ability to function professionally in Japanese, then it's not going to be hard for you. And if the whole reason why I'm saying that it's actually good to have N1 in the first place is so that you can work at a Japanese company, right?
Sure.
Or have opportunities to live in Japan. And so if you're going to work at a Japanese company, you need to have real Japanese ability anyway. True. If you just somehow game the test and like get really good at test taking because you practice JLPT test taking, but you don't have the true raw ability to back it up, and then you pass, and then you somehow get a job at a Japanese company, that's not actually going to be a good position to be in. He's
right. That's basically the fake it until you make it, right? But then it's a problem because if you can't speak, which is absolutely true, this happens. So I'm agreeing with him on this one. You do, and that's in fact a problem with the way the text is structured because the test is missing a spoken sector, which is ridiculous to me. So basically you could totally be an N1 on paper, but then you can't order coffee in Japanese. It's absolutely possible that you sound awful. You don't speak well. It's possible, theoretically possible, and that's a failure in the system. At least with the English tests, if you take a Cambridge, City and Guilds, there is the spoken part, and the test is complete when you have both.
Right, because you're not gonna have the ability to keep up with what's expected of you.
Yes.
Right. So I think that if you're someone who, as a goal for yourself, you want to get to the point where, yeah, you can watch Japanese content without subtitles comfortably. You can read Japanese newspapers, blogs, books, these types of things comfortably. Then that's your real goal. And you don't need to study for the JLPT. Just achieve that goal you have of becoming proficient in Japanese in general, and then you'll be able to pass the test no problem, like whatsoever. Like, I'm a bad test taker. I always have been, and I still was able to do very well on this test just off my raw Japanese ability. And there's people that have been studying Japanese for a way shorter time period than me and did better than me on the test without actually studying for it at all, just off their raw Japanese ability. So that's basically my argument for why you don't need to study for the test, right? If you just get good at Japanese overall, you'll be able to pass it. I can guarantee you that. You're not going to struggle with it if you have basic Japanese competency. But what about studying for the test just as a way to benchmark your own ability or have a certain path laid out to you to guide your studies? Because
Some people like that. Probably not the best way to do it, but I guess why not?
I think a lot of people, when they come into learning Japanese, the JLPT becomes like their kind of default curriculum. Right?
Yeah,
It's like,
I mean,
if you're studying Japanese
sure.
in a university setting, then maybe they give you Genki, or they give you
Yeah.
they have
Minna no Nihongo.
a curriculum they use at that university. But if you're self-studying, then that can be a tricky thing, right? It's like, how should I guide my study? There's all these resources out there. Getting fluent in Japanese is such a large, vague goal. It can be really nice to have something like a set of proficiency levels, like the JLPT, where you can just be like, well, I'll
It's a little
study for
overhyped.
the N5 and then N4 and N3, and then by the time I get to N1, I'll be fluent in Japanese. I totally get the appeal of that,
Yeah.
but in reality, I don't think that's a good way to go about studying Japanese.
I agree.
Because if you study for the JLPT test, you'll get good at the
taking
test
it.
and you'll become able to take it, but that won't necessarily mean that you have true competency.
True.
Right? There are people who actually have studied their way to the point of they can pass the JLPT N1, but they're not good at Japanese at all.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, this is a quite common experience in Japan, is meeting people that have N1 and they can barely hold their own in a basic conversation just about everyday topics. Right?
Common, is it? I don't know if it's common, but yeah, it has absolutely is a thing. He's right.
Right? There's this other kind of idea that goes around of like, if you're really good at Japanese, it's possible to be good at Japanese but still not be able to pass the test because the JLPT is so hard. And that, honestly, I think is a misnomer. My experience is that
Only in like the kanji, I guess, section.
if you have a well-rounded
But
set
well-rounded,
of abilities
yeah,
in
sure.
Japanese, both in terms of reading and listening, you can converse in Japanese, you can read basic things, the test will not be hard for you. That, I think, is the reality. And honestly, I think some people might be coping really hard when they try to say that the N1 is super hard or something like that, right? At least if we're talking about passing, like I said. So basically what this means is that if you get good at Japanese in general, you'll be able to pass the test. If you study for the test, you'll be able to pass the test, but you won't necessarily build overall Japanese ability. So you might as well take the path that leads to having both, right?
I
I mean,
agree.
you want the test and the Japanese ability. You
Yes.
don't just want the certificate, right? Because if you don't have the ability to back that up, really, what good is that for you in the long term? And in general, even if you try to take some kind of for you in the long term. And in general, even if you try to take some kind of hybrid approach where you're studying your vocab based on the JLPT, but you also do kind of general immersion and stuff, it's still just going to be less than optimal because the JLPT curriculum, in my opinion, is just not a very good curriculum. Like it's not really made by people that have learned Japanese themselves, right? It's made by native speakers that are trying to imagine what will be useful to people
Makes
that are
sense.
learning Japanese.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's also centered around business Japanese and being in a Japanese work environment. And like when you're at like the N5 or like N4 type of level, like you're not going to be in a Japanese work environment anyway. So it doesn't matter whether you know those word environment words at that level yet or not. It's going to be
Good point.
a much better way to go about learning Japanese to just find content you actually like, whether that's anime or YouTube videos or streamers or whatever. Learn the language that is comprehensible to you and is actually interesting to you.
Yes.
Build your base of ability that way.
Be a little careful with anime because I mean, learning of 15 different ninja spells, in and in the kanji. I mean, sure, if you enjoy it, but I wouldn't like make it the focus of your. Because then again, you got to be able to order a damn coffee.
And then later, if you need to broaden your vocabulary, learn more words used in the office, then just watch some dramas that take place in the office, right?
That's fine.
Or like, read a manga that takes place
Totally.
In a work environment. You can learn all those words a lot more fun and a lot more organic.
He's right.
Right? Like generally the list of grammar points and everything that the JLPT has are just not very well put together in my opinion. And generally you just don't need them. That's the thing overall that, I've been saying on my channel forever is a lot of people, they want some like predefined path to follow when they're learning a language. Like they want a list of vocabulary, a list of grammar points. But the bottom line is you're going to get better faster and have a better time if you just let go of that and you don't use those things, right? Just find content that you like and learn the stuff that comes up. And if you do that, eventually you'll know everything you need to know. By definition, if a word never comes up anywhere except on some list, you don't need to know it.
That's right.
And who knows, maybe you'll need it to get a perfect score on the test. But like I said, you don't need to get a perfect score on the test. And if you just get good at Japanese overall, you'll be able to do plenty fine on the test. I can guarantee you that. And honestly, for me, like I said, I never have studied vocabulary off a list or anything. I just read very widely and learned words that came up in the books. And in terms of vocabulary and knowledge, the hardest section of the hardest level of the test, I got a perfect score on. So again, you don't have to necessarily take it as far as me, but I can tell you that if you just get good at Japanese in general, you'll be able to pass the test. And that's what's going to be the most efficient path to the final goal that you should have, which is getting good at Japanese and being able to pass the test.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Again, please make fun of me in the comments for getting as bad of a score as I did. But ultimately, don't worry about getting good at the JLPT. Just get good at Japanese.
Okay, well, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, at the end of the day, I disagreed with quite a few things, but I did also agree with quite a few things. And it's always nice to learn from direct experience, isn't it? I'll be looking forward to take my own. This year, I'm definitely wanting to get an HSK and HSKK for my Mandarin. But when it comes to Japanese, a JLPT, yeah, why not? We'll see if I can do it this year, with the child that we're having. He'll be born in soon. So I'm not sure if I'll have time to get both, but worst case scenario, 2027 for the JLPT, but we'll see. Thank you for watching. Keep studying. And anyways, congratulations, Matt. It's still a great achievement. Ciao, ciao. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content. And at the same time, you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much.